My boss's wife invited me to a charity gala so she could watch rich people laugh at me, but she had no idea the dress I would wear that night was insured for $2 million. My name is Maya Hartwell. I was 27 when I spent 8 months cleaning marble bathrooms, steaming silk sheets, polishing silver, folding hand towels into little hotel triangles, and serving coffee in a mansion on the coast of Greenwich, Connecticut, under a name that was not really mine. To the Whitakers, I was Maya from the agency. Not Miss Hartwell. Not the daughter of Evelyn Hartwell, one of the most respected couture designers in New York. Not the woman who had grown up backstage at fashion weeks, who had watched actresses cry in fitting rooms because my mother had made them feel powerful again. Not the woman who had once sat beside ambassadors and CEOs at charity dinners before she could legally order wine. Just Maya. The housekeeper. The girl who entered rooms quietly. The girl who was supposed to lower her eyes when someone important walked past. The girl who could hear everything because nobody believed she mattered enough to remember. The woman of that house was Vivian Whitaker. She was beautiful in the way expensive things are beautiful when nobody has touched them with warmth. Blonde hair always blown out. Nails always pale. Diamonds always just big enough to make sure the other wives noticed. She never shouted. She didn't need to. Her voice could cut through you gently, almost politely, and somehow that made it worse. Her husband, Grant Whitaker, owned a private security and risk management company that protected luxury hotels, political donors, celebrity estates, and corporate executives who liked to say they were privacy conscious instead of afraid. People in their circle treated him like a man whose phone calls could change lives. He knew police commissioners, judges, governors, and billionaires who smiled at him like they owed him something. She did not simply walk through her 14-bedroom house. She inspected it like a queen searching for treason. A wrinkle in a linen napkin could ruin her morning. A water spot on a wineglass could make her sigh for 10 full seconds while everyone froze. A fingerprint on the elevator button could turn into a lecture about standards. And from my first day in that mansion, she made it very clear what she thought I was. Do not use the front staircase unless you're carrying something, she told me before I had even put down my bag. Yes, Mrs. Whitaker. Yes, Mrs. Whitaker. And please don't hover near guests. It makes people uncomfortable when the help looks too interested. The help. She said it with a smile. I smiled back. Not because I was weak. Because I had been raised by women who could survive a room full of knives and still thread a needle. I had chosen to be there. That was the part nobody knew. My mother, Evelyn Hartwell, built her fashion house from a rented room in Brooklyn and one sewing machine that shook so badly she had to hold the table with her knees. By the time I was 18, she was dressing Oscar winners, first ladies, opera singers, tech wives, heiresses, and women who paid $80,000 for a gown because it gave them a story to tell when they entered a room. I grew up surrounded by beauty, but also by labor. I knew the names of seamstresses. I knew who had arthritis in her fingers. I knew who came in early because she needed overtime to pay rent. I knew how many invisible hands it took to make one woman look effortless. Still, people saw me as the lucky daughter. They were not wrong. I was lucky. I had a mother who loved me, money I had not earned as a child, and a last name that opened doors before I touched the handle. But after my 26th birthday, I felt like I was disappearing behind that name. Every idea I brought to the company got praised before anyone even looked at it. Every mistake I made was softened. Every room I entered already expected me to be special. I hated it. I told my mother I wanted to step away for 1 year. No Hartwell credit card. No driver. No assistant. No introductions. I wanted to know who I was when nobody had a reason to flatter me. She looked at me for a long time across her studio table, surrounded by sketches and fabric swatches. You want to become anonymous, she said. I want to become honest. My mother smiled sadly. Then don't do it halfway. If you hide your name, hide it completely. Learn how people treat you when they believe you can do nothing for them. That was how I signed up with a domestic staffing agency under my father's last name, Bell. My father had died when I was 9, and very few people outside old family paperwork connected him to Hartwell. I became Maya Bell on agency forms, moved into a small rented apartment in Queens, and started taking placements. First, I cleaned for a retired professor on the Upper West Side who left me books and overpaid me because he said loneliness should come with hazard pay. Then I worked for a young family in Brooklyn Heights who treated me kindly but constantly apologized for messes they kept making worse. Then the agency called about the Whitakers. High-end home, the coordinator said. Demanding client, but excellent pay. They need someone discreet. Discreet. That was the word rich people used when they wanted you to see everything and repeat nothing. I took the job. At first, I told myself Vivian was just particular. Some people were raised to confuse control with taste. But Vivian was not merely particular. She was cruel in a way that had been polished until it looked like etiquette. If I placed a cup too close to the edge of a tray, she asked if I had been raised in a barn. If I wore my hair in a neat low bun, she said I was trying too hard to look elegant. If I kept my face plain and quiet, she said, see? That's better. Service should fade into the background. Her friends were worse because they performed cruelty for each other. Rebecca Ames and Marisol Crane came over almost every Thursday at 4 in the afternoon to drink champagne on the terrace and discuss foundations, Botox, private schools, and the marriages of women they secretly envied. They liked to talk about charity while ignoring the people refilling their glasses. One day, I brought out a platter of smoked salmon toast points while Vivian was telling them about a fundraiser at the New York Public Library. Rebecca tilted her head at me. Vivian, she said, your new girl has posture. Marisol looked me up and down. She does. If you dressed her properly, she could almost pass for somebody's assistant. Vivian laughed softly. Don't encourage her. Next she'll think she belongs in the dining room. The three of them laughed. I lowered the tray. My hand stayed steady. Inside my head, I wrote down every word. I did not plan revenge then. I need you to understand that. I was not hiding in that house like a spy waiting to ruin someone. I wanted the 1 year to end. I wanted to return to my mother's studio with something real inside me. I wanted to design a collection inspired by the women who moved through wealthy homes before dawn and after midnight, carrying other people's lives on tired backs. But Vivian turned my patience into a game. The person who made the house bearable was Elena. Elena Morales had worked for the Whitakers for 6 years. She was 42, a single mother from Queens, and the strongest woman I had ever seen carry a laundry basket. She ran the household schedule, trained new staff, remembered every allergy, every delivery code, every broken hinge, every guest preference, and somehow still found time to text her teenage son reminders about homework. I laughed for the first time that week. Elena warned me about Vivian's moods, Grant's temper, Rebecca's gossip, and Marisol's habit of accusing staff of stealing whenever she misplaced anything. She once said a bracelet was missing, Elena said. It was in her Pilates bag. She did not apologize. Of course she didn't. Elena had a way of saying devastating things softly. I grew attached to her before I realized it was happening. We ate standing up. She told me about her son, Mateo, who wanted to study engineering but pretended not to care because he was afraid of wanting something expensive. I told her pieces of the truth, never the whole thing. I said my mother worked in fashion. I said I had left home to figure myself out. I said I knew what it felt like to be underestimated. Elena believed me because that part was true. Then, for days before the gala, everything changed. The event was called the Sapphire Children's Gala. It was the kind of New York charity night where everyone spoke about generosity under chandeliers while wearing more money than most families saw in a year. It raised funds for pediatric trauma care, which should have made it meaningful. But for Vivian and her friends, it was also a social battlefield. Who had the best table? Who donated publicly? Who arrived with which designer? Who got photographed? For weeks, the Whitaker house had been preparing for it. Florists came in and out. Stylists called. Messengers delivered garment bags like sacred relics. Vivian tried on 11 dresses in 3 days and blamed her reflection for each one. On Wednesday afternoon, she summoned me to her dressing room. Vivian stood before 3 mirrors wearing a pale green gown that made her look like a diamond on ice. Rebecca lounged in a velvet chair with champagne. Marisol was taking photos of herself in the mirror, angling her phone to make sure her jaw looked sharp. Maya, Vivian said brightly. That brightness scared me more than anger. Yes, Mrs. Whitaker? I have a surprise for you. Rebecca's lips curled. Marisol stopped pretending not to listen. Grant and I bought a full table at the gala on Saturday, Vivian continued. And I thought, since you work so hard for us, it might be nice for you to come. I stared at her. To the gala? Yes. As a guest. She smiled wider. Isn't that generous? Rebecca nearly choked on her champagne. Marisol laughed. Except Cinderella had a fairy godmother. Vivian looked at me as if waiting for me to blush, stammer, beg, or refuse. I understood the trap at once. They wanted me there as entertainment. A housekeeper in the wrong room. A girl in a cheap dress under museum lights. A charity prop. They wanted photos. They wanted whispers. They wanted to tell the story later at brunch. You should have seen her, poor thing. Vivian walked toward me and lowered her voice just enough to make it feel intimate and poisonous. Wear whatever you have. I'm sure you'll find something appropriate. Rebecca covered her mouth. Marisol did not bother. I could have refused. I almost did. Then Vivian said the sentence that sealed it. Don't be nervous. It will be good for you to see how real society works. Real society. As if I had been living underground. As if her world had invented dignity. I looked at the 3 women, all waiting to enjoy my discomfort. Thank you for inviting me, I said. I'll be there. Vivian blinked. She had expected panic, not calm. Wonderful, she said. Don't be late. It would be embarrassing. I smiled. No, Mrs. Whitaker. I wouldn't want to embarrass you. That night, I went back to my apartment in Queens, locked the door, and sat on the edge of my bed without turning on the light. For 8 months, I had swallowed insults because I believed I was learning something. I had told myself that being unseen was the point. I had told myself that Vivian's cruelty was not personal, it was a symptom of a world built wrong. But humiliation changes shape when someone plans it in advance. She had not snapped. She had not lost her temper. She had invited me into a room of cameras and donors because she wanted to watch me understand my place. I picked up my phone and called my mother for the first time in 5 months. She answered on the second ring. Maya? Just hearing her voice made my throat tighten. Mom, I said, I need the Midnight Atlas. Silence. The Midnight Atlas was not simply a dress. It was the closing piece from my mother's Paris collection 2 years earlier, a midnight blue couture gown embroidered with 8,000 handset crystals in patterns inspired by old star maps. The bodice was sculpted like armor, the skirt moved like dark water, and the train caught light as if the night sky had been cut and sewn onto silk. It had been worn once, photographed everywhere, and then preserved in our archive because several museums had requested it. It was insured for $2 million. My mother's voice changed. What happened? I looked at my hands. My cuticles were dry from cleaning products. My wrists smelled faintly of bleach and lavender detergent. They invited me to a gala so they could laugh at me. My mother inhaled slowly. Who? Vivian Whitaker. Another silence. This one was colder. Grant Whitaker's wife? Yes. My mother had been circling a business conversation with Grant for months. His company wanted to handle security for our new flagship store and a private archive facility. He had also been pushing some partnership involving luxury uniforms for hotel clients, always through people who insisted he was powerful enough to be useful. My mother had not committed. Now I knew she never would. Finally she said, Are you ready to stop hiding? I don't want to stop hiding, I said. I want to make her see the person she thought she was humiliating. No, my mother said gently. You want to make her see herself. That sentence sat between us. Then she asked, Do you want me there? I almost said no. Pride is a foolish thing. Pain makes it louder. But I was tired. Yes, I whispered. My team will come Saturday afternoon, she said. And Maya? Yes? Walk in slowly. On Saturday, Vivian spent the morning pretending not to watch me. She gave me too many tasks. She had me repolish the entry mirrors, refold napkins that were already perfect, and steam a backup shawl she had no intention of wearing. Every time she passed me, I felt her excitement. Not happiness. Anticipation. She was waiting for the evening like a child waiting to open a cruel gift. Elena noticed. What did she do? She asked in the pantry. She invited me to the gala. Elena's face went still. As a worker? As a guest. Oh, honey. I know. She wants to hurt you. I know. Elena looked toward the hall, then back at me. Then don't go. I'm going. Her eyes searched mine. You have something planned. I hesitated. Then I said, I have a dress. Elena smiled sadly. A good one? Pretty good. She squeezed my hand. Then don't just wear it. Survive it. At 1:30, I left the Whitaker mansion early, telling Vivian I needed time to get ready. She gave me permission with the kind of smile people use when they believe they are being generous to someone beneath them. At 3, my apartment buzzer rang. I opened the door and nearly cried. My mother had not sent a box. She had sent a small army. 2 stylists. 1 makeup artist. 3 ateliers assistants. A security courier with a black garment trunk. And behind them, wearing sunglasses and a cream coat, stood Evelyn Hartwell herself. My mother removed her sunglasses the second she saw me. Oh, baby, she said. I tried to laugh. I'm fine. No, she said. You're standing. That is not the same thing. Then she hugged me so tightly I forgot to be strong. For the next 2 hours, my tiny apartment became a couture dressing room. Steam filled the air. Brushes moved over my face. My hair was pulled into a sleek low twist that showed my neck. My nails, chipped from work, were cleaned and painted a deep blue-black. My mother sat on my bed, watching quietly, her hands folded over her cane. She did not interfere. She did not fuss. She simply stayed. When they opened the garment trunk, the whole room changed. The dress was darker than navy, deeper than sapphire, almost black until light touched it. Then it broke into constellations. The crystals had been sewn by hand into long, sweeping lines that made the body look taller, stronger, impossible to ignore. It did not sparkle cheaply. It glowed with restraint, like a secret that knew its value. When I stepped into it, I felt the weight first. Not heavy enough to burden me. Heavy enough to remind me that women had worked 600 hours to make it exist. My mother stood and adjusted the neckline herself. In the mirror, I did not see Maya from the agency. I did not even see the girl who had run from her last name. I saw both women at once. The one who cleaned Vivian's bathrooms. The one who had grown up among gowns worth more than cars. The one who had been insulted. The one who had remembered. My mother came behind me and placed 2 diamond and sapphire earrings in my ears. They had belonged to my grandmother. Too much? I asked. For a woman walking into a trap, she said. Not nearly enough. At 7:15, a black car took us to Manhattan. The gala was being held inside the New York Public Library, all stone lions, grand steps, glowing windows, and photographers calling names like they were casting spells. Outside, people in gowns and tuxedos stepped from cars under camera flashes. Inside, the air smelled of flowers, perfume, champagne, and money pretending to be kindness. My mother did not enter with me. That was her choice. This first moment is yours, she said in the car. I'll be inside when you need me. I nodded. The driver opened my door. For 1 second, sound dropped away. Then the cameras started. At first, the photographers did not know who I was. They only knew the dress. I heard someone gasp. Is that Hartwell? No, that's the Midnight Atlas. Who is she? I climbed the library steps slowly, just as my mother had told me. Every crystal caught the flash. Every head turned. Near the top of the stairs, I saw Vivian. She stood with Grant, Rebecca, and Marisol beneath a huge arrangement of white orchids. Her pale green gown looked perfect. Her diamonds looked cold. Her smile was already formed, ready for the moment she would introduce me as her little act of charity. Then she saw the dress. Her smile died so fast it almost made her look honest. The champagne flute slipped from her hand and shattered on the marble. People turned. I reached the landing. Vivian's face had gone white. Rebecca whispered, "Oh my God." Marisol, who knew enough fashion to fear what she was seeing, said, "That's the Midnight Atlas." A man behind her murmured, "The Hartwell archive piece?" Someone else said, "That gown is insured for $2 million. Vivian stared at me as if a ghost had put on couture and come back for her. I walked straight toward her. Not quickly. Not dramatically. Slowly. The way women walk when the room has finally become theirs. "Mrs. Whittaker," I said. "Thank you for inviting me." Her mouth opened. No sound came out. I looked down at my gown, then back at her. "You were right. I found something appropriate." A few people nearby laughed before they could stop themselves. Grant Whittaker stepped forward, his eyes moving from my face to the dress and back again. "Vivian," he said quietly, "who is this?" For the first time since I had known her, Vivian looked afraid of her husband. Vivian swallowed. "She works at the house." Rebecca grabbed Marisol's wrist. I smiled. "I worked at your house, Mr. Whittaker. For 8 months. In what capacity? Housekeeping. Laundry. Service. Whatever your wife decided I was allowed to be that day." Vivian found her voice. "Maya, perhaps we should speak privately." I laughed once. It was not loud, but it carried. "For 8 months, you corrected me in front of guests, staff, delivery drivers, florists, stylists, and women who came to your house to drink champagne at 4 in the afternoon. I don't see why privacy suddenly matters." A woman nearby covered her mouth. Vivian reached for my arm. I stepped back before she could touch me. "Don't," I said. That one word landed harder than a slap. Grant's jaw flexed. "What is your full name?" he asked. I met his eyes. "Maya Hartwell." The air changed. It was almost physical. You could feel the room inhale. Grant knew immediately. Rebecca knew half a second later. Marisol's face collapsed. Vivian looked from me to the dress as if she were trying to force the truth back into the impossible. "Maya Hartwell," someone whispered. "Evelyn Hartwell's daughter? That Maya Hartwell?" I saw the calculation begin in Grant's eyes. I saw him rearrange the last 8 months, every breakfast I had served, every hallway I had crossed, every time he had discussed business while I stood within earshot holding a tray. I watched him realize I had heard things. A lot of things. He turned to his wife. "What did you do?" Vivian's eyes flashed. I didn't know who she was. I looked at her. "That is not the defense you think it is." The words cut through the little circle around us. Someone murmured, "Exactly." Vivian's face hardened with humiliation. "You lied to us," she said. "No," I replied. "I applied for a job under my legal middle name. I cleaned your house. I followed your rules. I earned my pay. You created the rest." Grant leaned closer to Vivian. "You invited her?" Vivian did not answer. "So I did. She invited me so I could see how real society works." Rebecca shut her eyes. Marisol whispered, Vivian, but the room was not done turning. A tall woman in a black satin gown approached our circle. Her name was Patricia Vale, the Gala chair. I had known her since childhood. She had once spilled red wine on my mother's white carpet and sent flowers for 3 months. Maya, she said warmly, kissing both my cheeks as if we were meeting at any normal event. Your mother just confirmed the donation paperwork. Vivian blinked. Donation? Patricia turned to the people around us. Evelyn and Maya Hartwell are launching a new fund tonight. Grant's eyes narrowed. What fund? I looked at Vivian. Then I looked at the crowd. Patricia placed a microphone in my hand. For a second, I could hear my heartbeat louder than the string quartet. Then I began. Good evening. Some of you know me as Maya Hartwell. Some of you may have seen me tonight and wondered where I came from. A few people in this room knew me until 2 hours ago as a housekeeper. The room went silent. My mother and I are establishing the Invisible Hands Fund to provide legal support, emergency medical grants, education assistance, and contract advocacy for domestic workers, caregivers, nannies, drivers, cooks, and household staff across New York and Connecticut. A wave of whispers moved through the room. I continued. For 8 months, I worked inside wealthy homes under another name. I wanted to understand the labor behind comfort. I learned many things. I learned how carefully some people fold napkins. I learned how early some women wake up to raise other people's children before going home to worry about their own. I learned that the people who keep beautiful lives running are often treated like furniture. Vivian stared at the floor. But I also learned something uglier. Cruelty does not always shout. Sometimes cruelty speaks softly. Sometimes it says, don't use the front staircase. Sometimes it says, the help should not look too interested. Sometimes it says, wear whatever you have. The room reacted then. Not loudly. Worse. With recognition. People began turning toward Vivian. I had not said her name. I did not need to. Vivian took one step back. I was about to lower the microphone when the second twist arrived. My mother entered. Not through the side door. Through the main archway. Evelyn Hartwell moved slowly because of her cane, but rooms had always rearranged themselves around her. She wore a black suit with a long ivory coat, no gown, no glitter except a single diamond pin shaped like a sewing needle. Her silver hair was swept back. Her face was calm in the way storms are calm before they choose a direction. The crowd parted. My mother came to my side and took the microphone. I have designed for women in this room, she said. I have dressed some of you for weddings, campaigns, funerals, magazine covers, scandals, comebacks, and nights you needed armor. I respect power. I know what it costs to build it. But I will never again dress power that survives by humiliating people who cannot answer back. I looked at Vivian. My mother turned her gaze to Grant. And for clarity, Hartwell House will not be moving forward with Whitaker Shield for our archive security, our flagship store, or any related properties. The room erupted in whispers. Grant's face froze. Evelyn, he said quietly, this is not the place. My mother smiled. This is exactly the place. Public disrespect loves private consequences. Tonight it can have public ones. A few people applauded. Then more. Then the sound spread. Grant's expression shifted from embarrassment to rage, but he knew better than to show too much of it. Men like him survived by controlling optics. He leaned toward Vivian and spoke through his teeth, but everyone close enough heard him. You just cost us the biggest contract of the year. Vivian whispered, how was I supposed to know? I took the microphone back. You were supposed to be decent without needing a resume. That sentence finished her. For the rest of the night, Vivian became a woman trapped inside a room that no longer reflected the version of herself she had purchased. People who had laughed with her at brunch suddenly found reasons to speak to someone else. Rebecca and Marisol drifted away from her like smoke. Grant disappeared into a side corridor, already on his phone, already trying to contain damage. I thought that would be the end. I thought the dress, the speech, the cancelled contract, and Vivian's public humiliation were the revenge. I was wrong. Because 22 minutes after I stepped off the stage, Elena called me crying. And the real war began. I almost didn't answer because my hands were still shaking and people kept stopping me to say brave things, generous things, shallow things, guilty things. But when Elena's name lit up my screen, I stepped into a quiet hallway between two marble columns and answered. Elena? Her breathing was broken. Maya, I'm sorry. I didn't know who else to call. My stomach dropped. What happened? They fired me. I closed my eyes. When? Right now. Mrs. Whitaker called the house from the gala. She said I must have known. She said I helped you make a fool of her. She told security to escort me out before midnight. I turned toward the ballroom. Inside, Vivian was standing near a donor table with a glass of water in her hand, pretending not to be ruined. Elena, listen to me. Do not sign anything. Do not accept cash. Do not leave alone if you feel unsafe. They're making me pack in front of the night guard. Her voice broke on the last word. Something inside me went very still. Vivian had not learned shame. She had simply redirected it toward someone with less protection. Put me on speaker, I said. Maya, do it. There was rustling. Then a man's voice, uncomfortable and low. Ma'am, she needs to vacate the premises. This is Maya Hartwell, I said. If Elena Morales is forced out of that house tonight, my next call is to an employment attorney, the agency director, and every reporter currently standing inside the New York Public Library. Do not touch her belongings. Do not block her access to her room. Do not pressure her to sign any document. Do you understand? Silence. Then the guard said, I need to call Mr. Whitaker. Good. Tell him I'm waiting. I hung up and walked back into the ballroom. My mother saw my face and knew at once. What did she do? She fired Elena. My mother's eyes hardened. Of course she did. I found Vivian near the dessert display, where she was speaking to Rebecca in a tight, panicked whisper. Rebecca saw me first and moved away quickly. Vivian turned. You fired Elena? I asked. Her face twitched. This is a private household matter. No. It became public when you punished another worker for your embarrassment. Vivian's eyes filled with hatred. She knew. She knew I had a dress. No, I said. You did that. Grant appeared behind her. What now? I turned to him. Elena Morales stays employed, paid, and unharmed until she chooses to leave under legal supervision. Grant's eyes were cold. You do not run my home. No, I said. But I know enough about your home to make you wish I did. That was the first time I saw fear in Grant Whitaker. Not embarrassment. Not anger. Fear. He knew what I had heard. For 8 months, I had carried trays through breakfast meetings. I had dusted shelves during speakerphone calls. I had stood in the dining room pouring coffee while Grant joked about creative billing and off-book favors. I had not understood all of it, but I had understood enough to write things down. Dates. Names. Companies. Visitors. And Elena, who had run that house for 6 years, understood far more. Grant lowered his voice. You should be careful, Maya. My mother stepped beside me. No, she said. You should. Grant looked at her, and for a moment the room felt dangerous. Of course, he said. We'll handle Elena's transition respectfully. I smiled. There is no transition tonight. Vivian said, this is insane. No, I said. This is what happens when the help has witnesses. By midnight, Elena was safe. My mother sent a car to the Whitaker house with 2 attorneys and the director of the staffing agency. They collected Elena, her documents, and 3 other staff members who suddenly decided they wanted to leave too. Not because I told them to. Because Vivian's phone call had made the whole house understand what they were worth to her. Disposable. At 2:10 in the morning, Elena arrived at my mother's townhouse in Manhattan. She walked through the kitchen in trance out of habit, even though my mother had opened the front door. Elena, my mother said gently, not that way. Elena froze. My mother stepped aside. In this house, you enter where guests enter. That was when Elena broke. She cried in my mother's foyer, still wearing her black work shoes, clutching a tote bag with half her life inside. I held her while she apologized for crying, which made me angrier than anything Vivian had said all night. The next morning, I thought the story would be everywhere. It was. But not the way I expected. A photo of me in the Midnight Atlas on the library steps had gone viral before breakfast. Fashion accounts called it, the return of Maya Hartwell. Gossip pages asked why Evelyn Hartwell's daughter had been working as a maid. Charity blogs praised the Invisible Hands Fund. One short video captured the exact moment Vivian dropped her glass and had already been watched 3 million times. By noon, headlines began appearing. Couture heiress goes undercover as housekeeper, exposes elite cruelty at Gala $2 million dress, $0 human decency. Who is Vivian Whitaker, and why is New York talking about her? People love to fall from grace, especially when the woman falling had spent years stepping on others. But Grant Whitaker had his own machinery. By 3 in the afternoon, a different story appeared. Anonymous sources claimed I had misrepresented myself to gain access to a private home. Another claimed I had staged the entire thing for publicity before launching a fashion line. A third suggested Elena had been dismissed for performance issues unrelated to the gala. That one made Elena laugh for the first time since midnight. Performance issues, she said in my mother's kitchen. I ran that house better than he runs his company. You did, I said. Then she stopped laughing. Maya, they'll come after you. They already are. No, she said. You don't understand. Mr. Whitaker doesn't just protect rich people. He collects secrets for them. I looked at her. Elena's hands tightened around her mug. I've seen envelopes. Names. Photos. Sometimes people came to the house through the garage, not the front. Judges. City people. A senator once. I thought it was security business. Maybe it was. Maybe not. My mother sat across from us, listening. Do you have proof? She asked. Elena hesitated. Then she reached into her tote bag and pulled out a small black notebook. I never wanted to use it, she said. But after my cousin's husband was deported because he complained about unpaid wages at a different house, I started writing things down. Just in case. The notebook was not dramatic. No secret codes. No spy movie nonsense. Just a worker's record of things rich people assumed no one would notice. March 12th, Mr. W told Mr. Callahan, keep it off payroll. April 3rd, Vivian told agency not to send older women with accents for trial. May 19th, envelope delivered to Judge Harlan, no invoice. June 6th, cook paid cash for 14-hour event, no overtime. July 22nd, Mrs. W said Elena knows better than to ask for benefits. There were 6 years of notes. Names. Dates. Deliveries. Calls. Household workers moved between properties without proper pay. Agency fees deducted from wages. Private security staff used for personal errands. Drivers told to falsify logs. Not all of it was illegal. Enough of it might be. And all of it was ugly. My mother called her attorney. By Monday, the Invisible Hands Fund had become more than a symbolic announcement. It had a legal team, an emergency hotline, and 17 domestic workers from families connected to the Whitakers asking if they could talk. By Wednesday, 4 former Whitaker employees had signed statements. By Friday, Vivian released a public apology through a crisis PR firm. It was awful. I regret that my actions may have been perceived as insensitive, insensitive. I sent the apology to Elena. She replied with 3 laughing emojis and then, she still thinks grammar can save her soul. I laughed so hard I almost cried. But the laughter did not last. That evening, a package arrived at my apartment in Queens. No return address. Inside was a printed photo of me from the gala, my face circled in red marker. Under it, someone had written, "You enjoyed your little show. Now be quiet." For a few seconds, I could not breathe. I had grown up around powerful people, but I had never been threatened like that. Not directly. Not alone. Not in my small apartment where the hallway light flickered and my neighbors argued through thin walls. I called my mother. She told me to leave immediately. I did. By the time I reached her townhouse, she already had security waiting. Real security. Not Grant's people. People loyal to her, not to money in general. The next morning, she took the photo to federal contacts she trusted through years of working with diplomats and public figures. She did not overstate. She did not dramatize. She simply placed the threat on a table and said, "My daughter exposed a powerful man's household abuses. Now someone is trying to silence her." That was when the third twist began moving. Quietly at first. The driver he underpaid remembered routes. The housekeeper he ignored remembered names. The florist who waited near the garage remembered faces. The assistant he once screamed at remembered which burner phone he used. The night guard he ordered around remembered camera blind spots. And Elena remembered everything. 2 weeks after the gala, Grant Whitaker walked into a private meeting at the St. Regis Hotel expecting to repair his relationship with 4 major clients. He did not know my mother had been invited. He did not know Patricia Vale had been invited. He did not know 2 attorneys from the Invisible Hands Fund were waiting in the next room. He did not know Elena was there. And he definitely did not know I was there too. I wore a black suit this time. No crystals. No borrowed galaxy. Just clean lines, flat shoes, and my father's old watch. Grant entered with 2 lawyers and the same smooth smile he used when cameras were near. Then he saw us. For 1 second, the mask slipped. "Maya," he said. "Evelyn. This is becoming obsessive." My mother said, "Sit down, Grant." He laughed. "You don't summon me." Patricia Vale closed the door behind him. "No," she said. "But your clients can." The clients were there on screen. 4 of them. Luxury hotel groups, private estate managers, and a museum board chair who looked like she had smelled smoke. Grant turned toward the monitor. "What is this?" I stood. "This is a courtesy before the filings become public." His lawyer said, "If this is an attempt at extortion," Elena stepped forward. Grant stopped speaking. That was the part one will never forget. He was not afraid of me in that moment. He was afraid of her. The woman who had made his coffee. The woman who had scheduled his dry cleaning. The woman who had carried clean sheets past rooms where he thought power made him soundproof. Elena placed her notebook on the table. "I kept records," she said. Grant's face darkened. "You stole private information." No, Elena said. I recorded my hours, my wages, my duties, and the names of people who asked me to do things outside my job. That is not theft. That is memory. My mother almost smiled. For the next 35 minutes, the attorney spoke. Calmly. Precisely. No shouting. No melodrama. Just documents, wage records, staff statements, unpaid overtime estimates, discriminatory hiring notes, intimidation after the gala, and possible misuse of private security resources. Grant tried to interrupt 9 times. Each time, his own lawyers touched his arm. When the threat photo appeared on the screen, he went still. I had nothing to do with that, he said. Good, I replied. Then you'll support a full investigation. He said nothing. One client disconnected before the meeting ended. Another said they were suspending their contract pending review. The museum chair removed her glasses and said, Mr. Whitaker, until this is resolved, you are not welcome in our building. Grant looked at me then. You don't know what you've started, he said. I answered, yes, I do. That's why I started it in a room full of witnesses. The next month was ugly. Vivian moved out of the Greenwich house first, or at least that was what the tabloids said. Grant's company lost 3 contracts, then 5. Former employees came forward. Not all publicly. Some were afraid. Some had signed agreements they believed could destroy them. The Invisible Hand's legal team worked carefully, quietly, case by case. Vivian tried to disappear. For 10 days, nobody saw her. Then, unexpectedly, she called me. I did not answer. She called my mother. My mother did not answer either. Maya, I know I have no right to ask you for anything. I know my apology was insulting. I let a PR team write it because I was still trying to survive embarrassment instead of face guilt. I invited you to that gala to make you feel small. That is the truth. I fired Elena because I wanted someone weaker than me to pay for what I had done. That is also the truth. I have spent my life confusing status with worth. I do not expect forgiveness. I am asking for 10 minutes, not to defend myself, but to tell you something about Grant that may help the women you are trying to protect. Vivian, I read the letter 4 times. Then I threw it across the room. Then I picked it up again. Elena told me not to go alone. My mother told me not to go at all unless attorneys were present. I listened to both. We met Vivian in a conference room at my mother's attorney's office. She arrived without makeup heavy enough to hide her exhaustion. For the first time, her hair was not perfect. She looked smaller, but not in a satisfying way. She looked like someone who had finally been left alone with herself. She sat across from me and folded her hands. My marriage is over, she said. I did not respond. Grant is not just afraid of wage complaints. He's afraid of the staff network. What staff network? One attorney asked. Vivian looked at Elena. The women talk. Across houses. Nannies, cleaners, drivers, personal assistants. They know who pays late, who drinks too much, who hits, who cheats, who hides cash, who threatens immigration status, who makes girls sign things they don't understand. Grant used to joke that household staff were the best intelligence system in America. Elena's mouth tightened. Vivian continued. He started using that. Not officially. Quietly. He encouraged clients to hire through certain agencies because information flowed back. He would learn things. Affairs. Addictions. Financial problems. Then he would sell protection from scandals he already knew about. The room went cold. My attorney leaned forward. Do you have evidence? Vivian closed her eyes. Yes. She opened her purse and removed a flash drive. I copied files before I left. I stared at the small silver object on the table. After everything, after the gala, after Elena, after the threats, it was Vivian who brought the knife that could cut Grant deepest. I wanted to feel triumphant. Instead, I felt sick. Why? I asked. Vivian looked at me. Because you were right. I could have treated you well without knowing who you were. But I didn't. And then I watched Grant do what he always does, find the weakest person in the room and make them carry the damage. For years, I benefited from it. I smiled beside it. I hosted parties inside it. I am not innocent. No, Elena said quietly. You're not. Vivian nodded. I know. The files changed everything. They had to be verified. Some were incomplete. Some were encrypted. Some pointed to things outside our ability to handle, so the attorneys brought in investigators and, eventually, federal authorities. I will not pretend I understood all of it. I am a designer, not a prosecutor. But I understood the result. Grant Whitaker's empire began to crack from the inside. Not because I wore a dress. Because the dress made people look long enough to see the workers standing behind it. 3 months after the gala, the Invisible Hands Fund held its first public event. Not in a ballroom. In a converted warehouse in Brooklyn with folding chairs, strong coffee, translation headsets, free legal clinics, childcare in the back room, and a wall where workers could write the sentence they wished employers understood. I am not part of the furniture. My time is not a favor. A paycheck is not permission to humiliate me. I raise your children while missing mine. Respect does not require knowing who my mother is. That last one made me cry in the bathroom. Elena found me there. Your mascara is losing the war, she said. I'm not wearing mascara. Then your face is losing. I laughed through tears. She handed me a paper towel. You did good, kid. No, I said. We did. She leaned against the sink. You know what's funny? When you first came to the house, I thought you wouldn't last 2 weeks. Why? Your hands. I looked down. They were too soft, she said. But your eyes were tired. I trusted the tired. At that event, 312 workers signed up for consultations. 47 employers quietly requested help creating fair contracts. 8 former Whitaker employees filed claims. Mateo, Elena's son, sat at the registration table helping people scan documents, pretending not to beam every time someone called him, sir. My mother watched from the back, her cane resting against her chair. That night, she told me, you wanted to find out who you were without my name. And you did. Then you used the name anyway. I looked at her. Is that bad? No, she said. That is inheritance done properly. I returned to design after that, but not in the way people expected. Fashion magazines wanted the scandal version of me. They wanted interviews with dramatic lighting and headlines about the heiress who went undercover. They wanted the $2 million dress. They wanted Vivian's downfall. They wanted revenge wrapped in silk. I gave them something else. A collection called Unseen. Not Invisible. I changed the name because Elena said, we were never invisible. People just trained themselves not to look. Unseen was built from the language of labor, apron ties, reinforced seams, utility pockets, washable cotton, quilted linings inspired by moving blankets, evening gowns cut from fabrics usually used for uniforms, jackets embroidered with time sheets, dresses with cuffs shaped like work gloves. Every piece carried the name of a domestic worker who had contributed a story, with permission and payment. Every sale funded the legal program. My mother gave me the full atelier. I gave the first row seats to workers. Not celebrities pretending to be humble. Not influencers filming their compassion. Workers. Caregivers. Housekeepers. Nannies. Drivers. Home health aides. Cooks. Personal assistants. Women who had spent years entering through back doors. When we presented the collection in New York, I insisted on using the public library again. Not because I wanted to relive the humiliation. Because some rooms need to be answered in the same language they used to wound you. The night of the show, I stood backstage listening to the crowd gather. My hands were cold. My mother stood beside me, adjusting a collar on the first model, pretending she was not emotional. Elena wore a black suit we had made for her. Mateo wore a tie he hated and looked handsome enough to be annoyed by it. Patricia Vale was there. So were attorneys, donors, former staff members, journalists, and women from houses whose owners were probably sweating through their tuxedos. Then someone said, she's here. I knew before they told me. Vivian. For a moment, the old anger rose so fast it burned. What is she doing here? Elena asked. She was invited, my mother said. I turned to her. You invited Vivian? No, my mother said. One of the workers did. Who? Elena looked away. I stared at her. You? Elena sighed. She asked if she could volunteer at the legal clinic. I told her she could stack chairs where I could see her. I almost laughed. You invited her to the show? No. I gave her one ticket and told her if she made it about herself, I'd drag her out by her expensive hair. Elena. What? Growth needs supervision. Vivian sat in the third row. Not the front. Not hidden in the back. The third row, wearing a plain black dress, no statement jewelry, no queenly posture. When our eyes met, she did not smile. She nodded once. It was not enough to heal anything. But it was different from the woman who had once told me not to use perfume. The show began. The first look was a white cotton dress structured like a housekeeping apron, but cut with the precision of a ball gown. The second was a navy coat embroidered with silver clock-in times from 14 workers' schedules. The third was a black evening gown with pockets deep enough to hold keys, medicine bottles, receipts, and secrets. The audience was quiet at first, unsure whether to clap or think. Then Elena walked. She was not supposed to. That was the twist my mother had kept from me. The final look had been designed without my knowledge. My mother and the atelier had made it with Elena over 6 weeks of fittings I somehow missed because everyone lied beautifully. It was not a gown. It was a long ivory coat, simple from far away, breathtaking up close. Embroidered into the lining were hundreds of names of workers who had joined the fund. The outside was clean, almost severe. The inside was a hidden universe. Elena stepped onto the runway. The room stood up before she reached the middle. I covered my mouth. Mateo yelled, "That's my mom." People laughed and cried at once. Elena stopped at the end of the runway and opened the coat. The names flashed under the lights. Not invisible. Never invisible. Unseen until now. When I walked out for the final bow, I did not look first at the cameras. I looked at Elena. She was crying openly and pretending she was not. My mother took my hand on one side. Elena took the other. The applause felt different from the gala. The gala applause had been shock. This was recognition. After the show, Vivian approached me near the old marble staircase where her glass had shattered months earlier. Security watched from a respectful distance. Elena watched from a much less respectful distance. Vivian stopped 4 feet away. "Maya," she said. "My name is still Maya Hartwell," I replied. A faint, ashamed smile crossed her face. "I know." We stood in silence. She looked toward Elena, then back at me. "I've been working at the clinic on Tuesdays. Mostly filing. Making coffee. Being told when I'm doing it wrong." "That must be traumatic for you," I said. She accepted the hit. "It's necessary." Istadidhat. I did not trust her completely. Maybe I never would. People do not become kind because they were embarrassed once. Shame can make a person better, but it can also make them perform goodness for applause. "You don't get redeemed because you learned how to stack chairs," I said. "I know. You don't get to make yourself the hero of the damage you helped create." "I know. And if you hurt Elena again, even by accident, I will personally design your downfall in 4 seasonal colorways." For the first time, Vivian laughed. Then she cried. Not dramatically. No shaking shoulders. Just tears slipping down a face that had once seemed too polished for weather. "I deserve that," she said. "You deserve worse." Yes. Her honesty annoyed me because I wanted her to defend herself. It is easier to hate someone who refuses to understand. She reached into her bag and took out a folded paper. "I signed the settlement documents for the household staff. Back pay, benefits, references, and independent contracts going forward. The attorneys have copies. I'm also selling the Greenwich house." That surprised me. "Why?" She looked up at the ceiling. "Because every room in it knows what I was." I did not know what to say. Then she added, "Grant has been indicted." The word moved through me slowly. I had known an investigation was coming. I had known contracts had collapsed and files had been handed over. But hearing it out loud, there, in the same building where Vivian had tried to make me small, felt unreal. "What charges?" "Fraud. Witness intimidation. Illegal surveillance. There may be more." Her voice trembled on the last sentence. "Did you give them everything?" I asked. "Yes." "Why?" Vivian looked toward the third row, now empty. "Because I spent years thinking power meant standing beside the most dangerous man in the room. Then a housekeeper with a notebook did what I never had the courage to do." Elena, who had been pretending not to listen, said, "Damn right." Vivian looked at her. "Elena, I am sorry." Elena folded her arms. "I know. I don't expect forgiveness." "Good." Vivian nodded. "But I hope one day." "No," Elena said. Vivian closed her mouth. Elena walked closer. "You don't get to hope at me. You get to work. You get to pay what you owe. You get to tell the truth when it costs you. You get to sit in the third row and be grateful nobody made you enter through the kitchen." Vivian's face crumpled. "Yes," she whispered. That was the most satisfying thing I had ever heard. Not because Vivian was humiliated. Because Elena was finally the one setting the terms. 6 months later, Grant Whitaker's name no longer opened doors. It closed them. His company was dismantled, sold in pieces, investigated in others. Some cases dragged on. Some settled. Some people denied everything until their emails betrayed them. Justice, I learned, does not arrive like thunder. It arrives like paperwork, delays, signatures, sworn statements, exhaustion, and women refusing to disappear. Vivian kept volunteering. Badly at first. She labeled files wrong. She apologized too much. She tried to donate money in ways that made everyone uncomfortable. Elena corrected her without mercy. Over time, Vivian learned to do boring things without needing to be praised. That was the closest thing to change I trusted. I never became her friend. This is not that kind of story. But one rainy Tuesday, I walked into the clinic and saw Vivian kneeling on the floor, helping an elderly caregiver pick up spilled documents. The caregiver was embarrassed, apologizing over and over. Vivian said, "Please don't apologize. Paper falls. People shouldn't." It was a small sentence. No cameras. No donors. No applause. I stood in the doorway and thought, maybe. Not forgiveness. Maybe. A year after the gala, the Midnight Atlas was displayed in a museum exhibition about fashion and labor. People came to see the $2 million dress, of course. They took photos of the crystals. They whispered about the scandal. They leaned close to read the little plaque. But next to the gown, we installed something more important. Elena's black notebook. Open to the page where she had written, July 22nd, Mrs. W said, Elena knows better than to ask for benefits. Under it, the museum label read, Memory is evidence. The first time Elena saw it behind glass, she went quiet for so long I worried we had made a mistake. Then she said, my handwriting looks terrible. I laughed. She wiped her eyes. Mateo, now accepted into an engineering program with scholarship support from the fund, stood beside her and took a picture. Mom, he said, you're literally in a museum. Elena shook her head. No, she said. My overtime is in a museum. We laughed until a security guard told us to keep it down. That night, after everyone left, I stood alone in front of the Midnight Atlas. I thought about the woman I had been on those library steps, wrapped in stars and rage. I thought about Vivian's glass breaking, Grant's face tightening, Rebecca and Marisol backing away, the room learning my name only after learning the price of my dress. For a long time, that part had bothered me. Would they have listened if I had walked in wearing a $40 dress from a thrift store? Would they have cared if my mother had been a nurse, a teacher, a cashier, a nobody to them? Probably not. That was the ugliest truth. The dress did not make me worthy. It made them notice. And once they noticed, I refused to let them look away. My mother joined me in the gallery, her cane tapping softly against the floor. You're thinking too loudly, she said. I'm thinking the dress got more respect than I did. She looked at the gown. At first, yes. At first? The dress opened the door. You held it open for everyone else. Do you ever regret letting me go undercover? She was quiet. Yes. I looked at her. She touched my cheek. I regret every night you cried where I couldn't hear you. I regret every insult you swallowed to prove something you should never have had to prove. But I do not regret the woman who came back. I closed my eyes. For a while, we stood in the soft museum light, looking at the gown that had started as my revenge and become something else entirely. The next morning, I visited the old Whitaker house one last time. It had been sold to a family from Boston with 3 children, 2 dogs, and apparently no interest in hosting champagne afternoons for cruel women. I did not go inside. I stood outside the gate with Elena, holding 2 coffees. Do you miss it? I asked. She gave me a look. The laundry room? Deeply. I smiled. We stood there watching movers carry out the last of Vivian's old furniture. A marble table. A gold mirror. Velvet chairs where Rebecca and Marisol had once laughed at me. Objects that had seemed powerful because they belonged to people who treated kindness like weakness. Now they were just heavy things being loaded into a truck. Elena nodded toward the house. You know, the first week you worked there, Vivian told me you wouldn't last. She told you that? She wasn't wrong. No, Elena said. But she thought thinking made you fragile. I looked at the mansion, at the windows I had cleaned until my shoulders ached, at the front staircase I had not been allowed to use unless carrying something. Then I walked through the gate. Up the front steps. Empty-handed. Elena followed me. We stood at the door, not entering, not needing to. I used to think power was being invited through the front door, I said. Elena sipped her coffee. And now? Now I think power is making sure nobody has to beg to use it. She smiled. That'll work. Before we left, I took one last look. I did not feel triumphant exactly. Triumph is too clean a word. I felt scarred, grateful, angry, healed in places, still tender in others. I felt like a woman who had gone into a house to learn humility and came out carrying a match. People still ask me if I hate Vivian. The honest answer is no. Hate would keep her too close. I remember her. That is different. I remember the way she told me staff should fade into the background. I remember the way she smiled when she invited me to be mocked. I remember the shattered glass. I remember her face when she realized a woman's worth does not begin at the moment rich people recognize her. But mostly, I remember Elena. Her notebook. Her tired eyes. Her coat opening under runway lights, hundreds of names shining inside it. That is the image I keep. Not me in the $2 million dress. Not Vivian crying. Not Grant losing everything. The Midnight Atlas is still famous. People call it the revenge dress. They are wrong. Revenge was only the spark. The real story was never about a rich girl pretending to be a maid. It was about what happens when the people trained to be silent begin keeping records. It was about a woman who thought she was invisible until she discovered she had been witnessing everything. It was about a room full of powerful people learning that dignity does not come from money, marriage, last names, or gowns that cost more than houses. Real power is not entering a room and making everyone look at you. Real power is turning the lights toward the people everyone else learned to look through. And real elegance was never in that $2 million dress. It was in Elena's notebook. It was in my mother's needle. It was in every worker who walked through a front door and did not apologize for being seen. Because nobody is born invisible. Some people are simply taught not to look. And some of us are born to make them.